Hey, vinyl community, it's a very, very special day today if you're a Metallica fan. And Lord knows, there's a few of you out there. But it's Friday, it's New Release Friday, and it's Metallica Reissue Day. So before we get to that, first of all, cheers everyone. To start things off, in case you've been living under a rock, Metallica, you probably best know them from such albums as Lulu. It's Lulu. This is the album we're going to talk about today that came out today. It's the Metallica 5.98 Garage Days Revisited album. We're going to dispense with the unboxing. There's not a lot to show with the vinyl itself. We'll go through the artwork really quickly. So let's pretend the box and knife are over there. The box is probably in a landfill right now. Anyways, so on the sticker itself, it says first time on vinyl since 1989, which is actually not true. I'm sure Metallica nerds out there will probably know that there was actually a 2004 reissue on vinyl, which I will show you right now. This was part of the Metallica vinyl box set from 2004. This is only interesting in the fact that they lied on the cover. But it gave me an extra album to compare against, which we'll get to in a second. What I did is I compared this new pressing with the original Canadian Electra pressing and the 2004 Warner Rhino pressing. Before I recorded this video, I kind of had second thoughts because I thought, well, is this actually a good album to review? Because it was never recorded to be sonically good to start with. The back cover actually says it's not very produced. But then I thought, you know what, maybe this is actually a really good album to review because let's see what they did with very little. So that's kind of where the point of view I'm coming from. So having said that, the artwork itself, pretty much straightforward. I will say this, I did compare the artwork. You have to excuse me, my original pressing is upstairs. And I forgot to bring it down after I pressed record. So take it as said that I've compared everything against the original pressing. The artwork is actually much better on the new reissue. It's a lot brighter, as you can tell. But other than that, the artwork is pretty much all the same. They've kind of redone the credits. If you're really anal, they've redone the credits to reflect the new website and all that nonsense. Anyways, artwork is actually a lot better than the original pressing and the 2004 reissue. So, just to backtrack slightly, when I was thinking about whether I should review this album, I was thinking, for some reason I had Black Sabbath's Born Again in my head. I was thinking, well, you know, if they brought out a remixed, remastered version of that, I would be talking about that endlessly because that album sucks for sound quality. And this album, when I played the original pressing and the 2004 pressing, and obviously we're talking just vinyl here, everything is kind of, the sound quality, everything is kind of mixed in together. There's a lot of leakage, I'm guessing. It's really, really hard to pick out every instrument exactly. It is very muddied. Having said that, that was part of the endearing quality of it. But if you're going to bother to bring out a remastered, I was really curious to see what they would have done with what they had to work with, I guess is what I'm getting at. As a lot of Metallica fans know, the vinyl reissues on Blackened Records, which is their label, have been very spotty. I think right now they're on their second batch of reissues. I could be wrong. The original batches of reissues on Blackened Records were really horrible. And that plays into this, is I did not know what to expect. This is one of those albums that it could be dire or it could be really great. So having said that, it's really good. I was really impressed, and it suffers from a lot of what Death Magnetic suffers with. They kind of just, the volume is a lot higher on this pressing. Brick walling, as some people refer to it. So it is louder. Having said that, louder is a lot better in this case. And what they did is you can actually pick out the instruments in this pressing. Unsurprisingly, the biggest difference is in the drums. Refer back to Injustice for All. But the drums, they did a really good job. The clarity is really amazing on this album as far as in relative terms, I guess, to what they were working with for original master tapes, I guess. The drums is the biggest thing that's noticeable, apart from the volume boost. The drums, the separation is really great. And like I said, you guys all know me. I'm not a complete audiophile snob, but I can differentiate between good and shit. But they did a really good job, and I have to give them props. And I'm not one of these Metallica fans that's everything's great in the Metallica world. I'll call bullshit when I have to. But they actually did a really good job. The instrument separation is amazingly, and I'm guessing that's because technology has come a long way, even since 2004, but especially since 1987. But that's the biggest difference you will hear on this album is that the clarity and the volume boost is actually good in this case. So having said that, before we get to other things about this album, if you were kind of curious, you haven't picked this album up yet, they did a really good job. I will say that with what they had to work with. Of the 3 vinyl presses I have, this is by far the best. And like I said, I only have an original Canadian electro pressing to compare against for original presses. But I honestly cannot see a Japanese pressing. I can't see a UK pressing being any better than the original Canadian, if you know what I'm talking about. So good job on this one. In case you were wondering, it's not as muddied, and it really does kind of explode out of your speakers. So yeah, good job on this one. Unlike a lot of their other Metallica blackened reissues, that really sound horrible. Maybe the band was listening and they actually spent some extra time on this one and made this one right. So hopefully this is the only vinyl reissue of this one coming out, because I don't think they can do any better than this one. So anyways, Metallica, I'm not going to give this one a rating, but because it's all in relative terms. But if you're thinking about it, if you're on the fence, if you're wondering, you've not got your copy in the mail yet, you haven't gone to the store to pick it up, it's a good buy, and they really did a good job on this one. So good job on that one. And that's, on here, as far as a review goes, it's kind of hard to go back and do a retrospective review of Metallica albums. You guys know I don't really do reviews a whole lot. But let's be honest, this isn't the greatest Metallica album ever, even though it is covers. I feel that the Garage Days Revisited album that came out after this is actually much better. It's a bit long. There's some filler in there, but the good stuff is really good, and it's kind of better than this album, to be honest with you. Having said that, this album is a gateway album to a lot of people for bands they didn't know, like Misfits and et cetera, et cetera. We all know the history of the songs behind this album, but yeah, it doesn't sit with my best Metallica albums of all time. Even Metallica does a lot of covers, so it's there, and it's good to revisit for the sake of memories. But and like I said, this is in retrospect. At the time, this was kind of the bee's knees, because we're hearing bands we never heard before. It's Metallica. You have Metallica blinders on, because at the time they were still this kind of underground band to a lot of people. So, like I said, in retrospect, not the greatest album ever, but it'll do. It's part of Metallica's catalog. It's it's Metallica. I do have a quick story though, and it wouldn't be one of my videos if it's not a story. I will be really quick though. Look on the back cover. If you have this album, and you might not be able to see this. Here's a picture of James. If you can see this, if you have a cover, or if you have the album, follow along. James is wearing a T-shirt by a band called SNFU, and they're from my city. They're a punk band from my city, and this was a big deal in '87 because this is pre-internet. We didn't know. Does anyone know this band outside of my city? We would pick up the odd skateboard magazine, and you would see SNFU. You'd think, oh, cool, people outside my city know them. And then this comes along. You get James Hetfield wearing an SNFU shirt. It's kind of a big deal because, like I said, SNFU are local legends in my city. And it was really cool because Metallica was embracing that kind of crossover thing, punk and thrash metal at the time. So that was a really big deal for people in my city, was to see an SNFU shirt on James Hetfield. How this plays into the story time is that I've been lucky enough, courtesy of Warner Music at the time, I've been lucky enough to go backstage and meet Metallica 3 times. 3 times. The first time, I believe, was the Saint Anger tour, I believe. And I'm going to show you a photo coming up. And how that plays into the back cover photo of James wearing that t-shirt. Absolutely by accident, when I went backstage, I was wearing an SNFU hoodie with the artwork the same as his t-shirts. And here's the photo of, I had to make a photocopy because I don't know where the original Polaroid was. So there I am with James Hetfield. I believe this is Saint Anger. You can see me there looking a lot different. That's the byproduct of working in music retail for 20 years and then working in clubs all nights, eating club food and not being the most healthy person on earth. But anyways, there's my SNFU hoodie I'm wearing. There's James' face looking at me like, get this kid away from me. Anyways, James Hetfield kind of broke out of line and he came up to me and he pointed at my hoodie. He goes, I know that for some reason. And he couldn't place where he knew the t-shirt from or the logo from. And since 1987, it's been a burning question with a lot of people in my city. How did James end up with an SNFU shirt? I had this opportunity to ask him finally. And I said, okay, it looks familiar because on the back cover of the Garage Days Revisited album, you're wearing an SNFU shirt. And he didn't remember, but he took my word for it. A lot of people around me kind of said, yeah, that's what you were wearing. And I said, okay, before you sign 100,000 albums I brought, I got to ask this question. It's been bugging us since 1987. How did you end up with that t-shirt? It was so cool. I told him how it kind of bridged the crossover punk metal thing. And he looked at me and he said, I have no idea. So my big opportunity to ask him, he had no idea. So that was kind of thing. He did recognize it. And I guess that's my little story time about kind of plays into the Garage Days album. But I will say this, and I do say this a lot whenever I talk about a band I've been lucky enough to go back and meet. I always say they're the nicest guys ever. Maybe I should make a video about bands that weren't very nice. That's probably more interesting. But Metallica really are really super nice guys if you have an opportunity to go back and I would never pay to meet them. But, you know, a lot of people do. They really actually do take time and talk to you, and whether it's disingenuous or not, they actually take the time to, you know, ask about you. They're really nice guys. So having said that, there you go. That's my album review. Like I said, there's not a lot to talk about other than it's not a new album, so you can't really break down songs. We're all familiar with the album. The only thing really left to talk about is sonically, how does it sound? That's really the only thing you can really talk about this album right now. And I have to say, well done. Well done. You finally got this one right the first time. So if you're thinking about picking it up, I don't give ratings. But let's give this 2 thumbs. From a Metallica nerd, 2 thumbs on this one. Having said that, this has been David Michael. This has been my album review of 1987's Metallica Garage Day Revisited. The best of all the pressings I do have. So pick it up. It's cheap too. It's 5 songs. It's cheap. I'll end this here. Thanks everyone for watching if you did watch this. And I'll be back with some kind of video. Who knows what it'll be. Thank you to everyone who's subscribing. Thank you to everyone who's been watching my videos. I really always appreciate it. Take care. We'll be back again. Oh, let's look at this one more time. If you actually thought I ended there, we're not going to end there. Look at this. What the hell was I thinking back then?